What a pleasure it is to be here. And let me start out by asking the question everybody in here is asking, and why did we schedule this on the same night as the NCAA National Championship? So I got to be done in an hour, I think is what they're saying, The question is, will anybody be listening? It's like having a debate on PBS. Or your own program on PBS. Governor, it's good to see you. Thanks for all that you do. Really good to see you. Lieutenant Governor, good to see you. Speaker Hambrick, thank you for having me here tonight and sharing your office with me. I want to thank the leaders, Roberson, Ford, Kirkpatrick. Thank to all of you as well. And if I could, I'd like to welcome back Senator Debbie Smith to this body. It would be good to have her back this week. And as you've heard, Senator Harry Reid recently announced he'll be retiring. Harry served. That was not an applause line. Harry has served our state with distinction, both local and state government, before representing Nevada in Washington, D.C. And Harry's coming home to Nevada. And I think his family's looking forward to spending more time with him. Out of the number of Nevada elected officials who passed away since the last session, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on a few of them that have stood out in my life. Joe Dini was a long-serving member, former Speaker of the Assembly when I was here. Marv Texera, former mayor of Carson City. He's my Pop Warner coach. He was my Little League coach when I was a kid. I also worked with Bernie Anderson, Pete Livermore. The leadership of these men will be missed greatly, and so will their service to our state. And though he was never an elected official, he was a fixture in the Nevada legislature for over 30 years. And I'm talking about Ed Vogel. When I served as Secretary of State, Ed and I operated under an open-door policy. And it wouldn't have mattered if I had a closed-door policy. He'd have kicked it down and got the information out of me that he needed. His service and institutional knowledge at the Capitol for the Review-Journal will be greatly missed. Today, I'm in familiar territory. Carson is home for me, always will be, always has been. As many of you know, my father, who is here, along with my mother and honey, my wife, thank you very much for being here. Yes? Okay, I'll do that. But my father owned and operated an automotive shop just across the street. Hanging around my dad's garage, sweeping the floors, taught me some of life's most valuable lessons. Being a small business owner is not easy. You wake up early and you stay late. But it does instill a discipline and a work ethic that inherently teaches you responsibility. And of course, I'd like to point out that I'm probably the only United States senator that can tune up your car, work on your transmission, and if you need it, I'll even sweep your garage. The Nevada Legislature. This is the body where I got my start in public service. I look back at that time fondly. You learn a lot here and you make a lot of good friends. Your work here is to help state advance and become a better place for its citizens. And I have the same job in Washington, D.C. The good news is this, is we've turned a corner in Washington, D.C. For the first time in 6 years, the United States Senate is open for business. We passed a balanced budget for the first time. We passed a balanced budget for the first time in 6 years. Committees are working. Amendments are introduced. They are debated. And bills are passed. In fact, a week ago Thursday, in 4 hours, we had more amendments on the Senate floor than we did all of last year. So my priorities in Washington revolves around one word, and that's progress. I learned very quickly that moving forward and fighting for a cause requires you to stick to your principles. I've also learned that when you're crafting legislation and you get 80% of what you want, you take it. And then you wake up the next morning and you fight for the other 20%. Since I last spoke to this esteemed body, I became a grandfather for the second time. It's my grandchildren's future, your children, your grandchildren's future that I'm fighting for. That's why I'm an outspoken supporter of passing a budget in Washington. Nevadans, this legislative body, and all American families have to live on a budget. Back in Washington, D.C., we're $18 trillion in debt. Our country continues to borrow $4 million per minute. By the end of this speech, our nation will have borrowed $60 million. If you calculate that, it's a 15-minute speech. And it only takes 2 days for the federal government to borrow Nevada's entire state budget. So now I've got your attention. Let me tell you what I believe the responsibilities of your federal government are. First, to provide for a national defense. Second, encourage commerce and maintain infrastructure. And third, provide a safety net for those who fall on tough times. Let's take number one. Providing a strong defense doesn't end on the battlefield. It extends to ensuring our veterans are properly taken care of when they return home after service. Every day, every single day, when I drive to work in Washington, D.C., I pass by the Iwo Jima Memorial and the Arlington National Cemetery. These monuments and grave sites serve as a testament to the sacrifices of our armed services and constantly reminds me of our responsibility to care for these men and women. One of the greatest privileges of serving in Nevada in the United States Senate is the opportunity to sit on the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee. With Nevada being home of over 300,000 veterans and approximately 27,000 of them are women veterans, I remain committed to advocating on behalf of the issues facing our veterans locally and nationwide. Chief among them is the VA disability claims backlog. I took the lead on the Veterans Affairs Committee to reduce the average wait time for Nevada veterans' benefit claims by spearheading the VA Backlog Working Group. While the wait time has improved, it still has far, far to go to the 125 days that the VA has promised, and it remains one of the longest wait times in the nation. It's unacceptable, and until the backlog is eliminated, I will not back down. I also believe the VA must look to the future and better prepare for the rise in number of women veterans. Today, nearly 2.3 million women are veterans of the military service. As I mentioned, here in Nevada, we have 27,000 of them. That's why I teamed with Senator Patty Murray of Washington, a Democrat, on legislation to make sure privacy and security in VA medical facilities are up to par and that each facility offers a full range of services to ensure female veterans are receiving proper care. Let's move to the economy. As reports have indicated, Nevada is fortunate that its economy is recovering better than many states. And this is great news. And I want to thank the governor and his leadership that our state has fared as well as it has, fared better than many. Thank you, Governor. Recently, I was assigned to the Senate Finance Committee. I sought this specifically because it allows me to help many of Nevada's citizens. I'll now be able to focus on strengthening and protecting key programs like Social Security and Medicare. These are important programs Nevadans depend on, and we must ensure that they're around for years to come. This assignment also gives our state a seat at the table to discuss tax reform. When it comes to simplifying the tax code, I feel no different than most of you. It's too big, it's too complicated, and it's too expensive. A friend of mine used to joke that the tax code is as long as the Bible, but unfortunately, with none of the good news. Last time the federal tax code was updated, Ronald Reagan was president. Tip O'Neill was Speaker of the House. Dick Bryan was our governor, and you paid 93 cents for a gallon of gasoline. That was back in 1986. I do believe fundamental tax reform is within our reach. And let me tell you why it should happen. First and foremost, our country is $18 trillion in debt. Number two, the last few years, there have been 30 inversions. And that's when a company's headquarters moved to a foreign country for a better tax climate. The latest example of this, you probably read about it, is Burger King. And finally, in the last 10 years, 1,300 companies have been bought out by foreign-controlled interests. One of the most recent was the company that makes bats for America's pastime, Louisville Slugger. That's over 100 years of tradition bought out by a Finnish company. Everybody in this room, every Nevadan, and every American agrees that this trend must be reversed. And the only way that will happen is through fundamental tax reform. Now let me tell you why it won't happen. Today, the White House will only participate in fundamental tax reform if it includes a $1 trillion tax increase. In 1986, as I mentioned, the last time we had tax reform, it was revenue neutral, agreed to by both Republicans and Democrats. And President Reagan made it happen. Don't get me wrong. When I think the president's right, I'll support him. When I think the president's wrong, I won't support him. President Bush wasn't always right. President Bush wasn't always wrong. And as leaders in Washington, if we understand this and work together, we'll move this country forward. This morning I spent some time with the governor and lieutenant governor down in southern Nevada at the opening of the I-11. Several legislators here in this room participated in that. And we broke ground on Interstate 11. Infrastructure is a top priority of mine. Interstate 11 is important for our state, and it's important to me. I'm pushing key legislation on I-11 on the Senate floor, and I'm proud to see this project moving closer to become reality. Last year, over 40 million visitors came to the Silver State, supporting almost 400,000 jobs. This designation of I-11 connects the two most populous cities in America without an existing freeway already between them. It has the potential to open even more markets for tourism and trade, which will improve our economy and create jobs. I believe it's important to find creative solutions to enact a long-term surface transportation bill, keep the Highway Trust Fund solvent without increasing our nation's deficit. And as co-chair of the Senate Finance Committee's Working Group on Infrastructure, I am well positioned to advocate on behalf of Nevada's and our nation's transportation needs. I strongly believe infrastructure plays a key role in the nation's and Nevada's economic growth. And that's why I'm seeking a long-term extension of the highway bill. It will provide jobs in the short term and economic growth in the long term. As Nevadans recover from one of the worst housing markets in history, I will continue to protect their interests as a member of the Banking Committee. For many people, their homes is the largest asset, and I want to make sure it stays that way, an asset and not a liability. Now, some people are arguing that we live in a rental society. I have 4 young adult children of my own, and I worry about their generation. A whole generation of young adults have now witnessed their parents struggle in this economy. These young adults have gone to college, acquired student loan debt, and struggled to find a job after graduation. And it's no wonder why so many are putting off the American dream of owning a home. For those Nevadans that already own a home, I teamed with Democrat Senator Debbie Stabenow of Michigan to introduce legislation that will benefit many Nevadans, the Mortgage Debt Relief Act. I have been fighting for continuous extensions of the Mortgage Debt Relief Act for years. The housing crisis may have ended for some, but I can tell you that in Nevada there are still many that have to sell their home at a loss in a short sale. I still can't figure out, for the life of me, why the IRS thinks it makes any sense to tax someone on income that they have never seen. This legislation is an example, a prime example, of how Washington can help Nevada's families. With over 85% of the land in Nevada being owned and controlled by the federal government, I'm a big proponent of transferring much of our lands back to local or state government control. Since my first days in the House, I've made sure land bills were a priority. In December, we had 8 lands bills included in key legislation that passed Congress, was signed into law by the President. Some of the areas positively affected were the Fallon Naval Air Station and the counties of Lyon, Elko, Clark, Humboldt, and Story. Best of all, we were able to get input and local buy-in from municipalities and counties across the state. It was a team effort and a strong coalition of public and private entities that did a lot of heavy lifting over the course of many years. We were able to see some of the fruits of our labor finally recognized. Let me give you a couple of examples. A prime example is what it means to local communities like the city of Yerington. The city will now work with Nevada Copper to extend its mining operation and create over 1,000 jobs while also providing new infrastructure and recreational opportunities. In southern Nevada, I was proud to team with Congressman Joe Heck on legislation to speed access to public lands so volunteer search groups could conduct searches for missing people. The Good Samaritan Search and Recovery Act will keep families from having to wait on the federal government and its bureaucratic red tape when it comes to searching for missing loved ones on public lands. I have no doubt in the coming years, our state will benefit tremendously from the economic development spurred on by these historic land bills. In these difficult times, it's more important than ever that we work together, find common ground, make tough decisions in order to get people back to work. I try in Washington to be as pragmatic as possible without compromising my principles. Like all of you, I want to see our state succeed, and I work every single day to achieve that goal. It's been a steady theme of my time in office and one I hope to continue. It's about making progress so tomorrow is a better day for future generations of Nevadans. A great president once stated, "The best way to predict the future is to create it." So I challenge this legislative body to heed the words of Abraham Lincoln and create Nevada's futures. Thank you very much for your time. Go Wisconsin. And I appreciate everybody. I do certainly appreciate everybody for being here. All of you, I know how busy you are, how much work it takes. I've been on your side of the aisle. I have worked and know how tough and difficult that can be. So thank you for being here tonight. To the constitutional officers, thank you for taking time from your busy schedule and spending some time with me. And to the leadership of this body and the Senate, thank you very much for all you do and what you do for the state of Nevada. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.